So I don't think it's an unpopular opinion to say that recently a lot of the new FPS games that have come out have been either complete failures or just overall stale and boring. And this is made even more obvious when you go to the Twitch categories for most viewed games, and all the FPS games are games that have come out years ago, like Apex and Fortnite and even Escape from Tarkov. And in my head, I had my own theories as to why this might be, why FPS games, the recent ones that have come out in like the last year, mostly in 2021, have just been so boring. But I decided I wanted to get some opinions from some other people to maybe get some other viewpoints on the issue. So I decided to ask the best place for unbiased, reasonable, and intelligent opinions over on Twitter. So I made a simple tweet asking for what reasons do you guys think the FPS genre has been so boring lately? And I got probably the most replies I've ever had on a tweet. So this should be pretty interesting. But actually, to my surprise, a lot of these replies were pretty reasonable, and I actually did agree with a lot of them. So I thought I'd start off with a reply that got a lot of positive feedback, and he made a lot of points. To go over it quickly, he said, games are too saturated with BRs, games are being rushed to make profit, no new IPs, mega casualization. SBMM annihilates fun, every game tries to be a hero shooter with abilities, not built with competitive in mind, and good games die because of no marketing. Now, a lot of these points you're going to see repeated a lot in these replies to this tweet. The big ones being saturated with BRs, games being rushed to make profit, games being too casual, and of course, skill-based matchmaking. So to start off, one of the points that I also had in my head is literally this guy's first point, and that is that the games are too saturated with BRs. Unfortunately, with how developing works, a lot of the BR games that are coming out now have been in development for years. A lot of these games have been in development since the big BRs came out, like Apex and Warzone, maybe even PUBG. But because it takes years to develop, these games are just now coming out where people are kind of getting sick of BRs. People are still going to play the battle royales that have really made their spot in the community, like Apex and Warzone, but for the most part, they don't care about any new BRs. And so unfortunately, I think Battlefield 2042 realized this a little too late. If you didn't know, there was massive rumors that 2042 was initially going to be a battle royale, and they quickly changed it to what it is now because they saw how unpopular the genre was getting. But obviously that didn't work out too well for them because the game is a complete failure anyways. But yeah, I definitely have to agree. I'm pretty much over BRs. I'll still try them out, and if they're really good, you know, I'll still play them. For example, Super People came out recently. Really fun. I put like 120 hours in the game in like 3 weeks or something. But for the most part, I do want something else other than battle royales. His second point, I mean, there's no argument against this. You literally have the perfect example that I just said like 2 seconds ago. Battlefield 2042, games are being rushed to make profit and they're failing. There has been so many delays on games recently, and through all the excuses there are, I'm sure some of them are valid. You know, COVID is completely fucked up so much shit. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how many times you delay it. If the game's not finished, you shouldn't release it. And 2042 just, for some reason, decided they weren't going to do that, and it caused their game to completely fail. Thankfully, I think some studios are finally starting to learn this. If you didn't know, this doesn't have to do with FPS games, but Stalker 2, a game that I've been really looking forward to, just announced that they're going to be delaying their game for 7 months. Probably seeing the trend of these games coming out unfinished like Cyberpunk and Battlefield 2042 and just completely failing. His next point, this is probably the one that I saw the most of, is talking about games being too casual now. There's a lot of different points that branched off of this. The fact that too many games are nerfing the living shit out of movement, just lowering the skill gap, and overall just making the depth of games so tiny that they get boring very fast. And I did see this brought up in a few of the other tweets and replies that this is probably an unfortunate side effect of crossplay becoming so much more common. A lot of FPS mechanics that make a lot more sense on mouse and keyboard to increase the skill gap and just make the game, in my opinion, more fun and have more depth to it, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense on controller. So obviously you have games like Warzone where the movement is very, very simple. Guns have little to no recoil. The game, for the most part, is designed for controller. But then in contrast, you have games like Escape from Tarkov and Super People, where the games, I mean, I'm sure you probably could play them on controller, but it would be a horrible experience because the games are definitely made more for mouse and keyboard. And in my opinion, just have more gameplay depth, are more fun to play, and are just more fun to watch. And the last point that I'm going to make on this guy's tweet, I didn't see this too much in the Twitter replies, but this actually was one of my reasons as well, is the fact that so many games are trying to be hero shooters now. This is becoming very, very common because I think the battle royale genre is dying down. So now people are trying to figure out other genres that are popular to copy off of. And really the next one is hero shooters, which, man, I feel like I'm really beating a dead horse. But once again, 2042 tried to do this with their new specialists or whatever the fuck they're called in that game. And yeah, if you kept up with the game at all, that did not work out at all again. There is just so little innovation in the genre right now. And I think that is probably, at least for me, the biggest reason why it's been so boring lately. Another one of the big points that I saw repeated a lot was skill-based matchmaking. This is definitely one of the biggest talking points recently with games like Apex and Warzone. And my opinion on this matter has definitely changed throughout the couple of years that it's really been implemented. I say there's definitely some pros and some cons to skill-based matchmaking in public games, especially the level of skill-based matchmaking there is. For example, recently in Vanguard, every Call of Duty now is going to have very strict skill-based matchmaking in public games. I think that's just how it always is going to be from now on. And that was no different in Vanguard. But I realized in Vanguard, if you actually played in a full party of friends who are all talking in Discord and making callouts, and you're purposely treating it like the ranked game where you're using the best gun in the game and really trying to win, it was actually fun. But unfortunately, you don't always have all your friends on to play with. And sometimes you just want to play casually and go for skins or some kind of challenges. But the skill-based matchmaking isn't going to change just because you want to try something different. So now you're sat there using probably the shittiest gun in the game all by yourself trying to do some kind of challenge. But at the same time, you're still going against full parties of really good players all using the meta weapons, and it's not fun. This is a massive topic and definitely one that I'd have to talk about in a different video entirely, because there is just way too much to argue about and bring up on this topic. But I just thought I would mention it because it was one of the most popular things I saw replied to this tweet, was that people thought SBMM was one of the biggest reasons FPS games have been so boring recently. Another common reply that I saw had to do with corporate greed and how now that the games that are coming out, the only focus is to make money. And while I do kind of agree with that it has gotten worse with the implementation of microtransactions, the fact of the matter is the main focus of these games forever has always been to make money. The opinion that I more agree with now is the fact that games try to maximize profits on initial release and not really on the longevity of the game. I think this is becoming more popular because of the releases of Call of Duty and how it's basically the same shit every year, and how a lot of the updates after the initial release are either lazy or just kind of copy paste of old maps that have been in Call of Duty for years. Obviously, this has to go hand in hand with the fact that games are releasing before they're finished too. Once again, beating a dead horse, but Battlefield releasing when it did, trying to maximize profits on their initial sales instead of making a good game and actually prolonging the game's player base. This guy actually says it very well in this tweet reply. He said, over-casualization, hyper-ration content to emphasize over-monetization options. Fuck me. This is a lot of big words. Over-reliant on initial launch sales numbers over long-term sales, player base retention, and live service models being a cop-out for minimum drip-fed output. This tweet really did just sum up a lot of the points that I made, but obviously sounded a lot more smart than I could have put it. I feel like a lot of post-launch content for some of these games has gotten a lot lazier as well. A lot of these battle passes have just become so boring and so grindy that it makes it a lot less fun to grind for challenges and different content in the game post-launch. Some of these replies are actually kind of out there and a little bit different than some of the other ones. This one, I'm not really sure how much I agree with this one, but I did think it was interesting. This guy said, I'm unironically of the opinion that economic accessibility that the console market brings to games has degraded their development quality overall. It's easy to make money catering to Walmart demographic because they don't perceive or demand quality, just cheap thrills. I guess this does kind of go with what I was saying earlier on how the implementation of crossplay and how much more common it's becoming has maybe in turn made games more casual and kind of more dumbed down. This is just kind of a meaner way to say it. And then of course you had a lot of people just saying, aim assist is too strong. This guy with the NFT profile picture just straight up said controller. But overall, I still think the large majority of the reason is the fact that there just has not been any kind of innovation in the scene really since the battle royale genre really blew up. Now that the BR genre has started to die down, it seems like most of these publishers and developers are just jumping on another bandwagon, and that would be hero shooters. And that is already starting to get very, very boring. So I don't know, it's an unfortunate place to be, especially for me being a mostly FPS streamer and YouTuber. I feel like really my only choice now is to go back to some of the older FPS games that still have decent viewership and player base, like Apex and Call of Duty and whatnot. But what I really want is something new and refreshing and fun to come out. But yeah, recently that has just not been happening. But anyways, I would actually be really interested to see what your guys' opinions are over here on YouTube compared to Twitter as to why the FPS genre has been so boring recently. Or even if you don't think it's been boring recently, why don't you think it's been boring recently? I would be very interested to see the contrast between Twitter and YouTube. So yeah, go ahead and leave a comment below and be as brutally honest as you want to be. Yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you have an amazing rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later.